For block Q, I found a really great stitch called a row of flowers. The other two stitches for this block are quite understated. This allows the row of flowers to be the hero stitch of this block. Here are the 2 pages you need to make block Q. The 3 stitches you need here, with the directions on how to do them, and over here, how to put them together. With the row of flowers stitch and the slipped stitch ribbing, we don't have to do short row shaping. Those two just marry together very nicely. So a nice easy block. After you cast on with the 2 colours, there's 1 purl row. Then you start straight into the slipped stitch ribbing, but the row of flowers has 4 rows of stocking stitch before you commence the row of flowers pattern. After you've done 1 pattern of the slipped stitch ribbing, that's 4 rows, and you have completed 4 stocking stitch rows before commencing this pattern, then of course you're up to row 1 of the slipped stitch ribbing and row 1 of this pattern. So 1, 2, 3, 4 there, 1, 2, 3, 4 there, but then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and 5, 6, 7, 8 on the row of flowers. After we have finished the flowers and the ribbing, and before we commence the stocking stitch ridges, we do a little bit along here of reverse stocking stitch. So you change to colour 4, knit 1 row, then work 5 rows of reverse stocking stitch, beginning with the knit row. So knit 1 row, purl a row, knit, purl, knit. Then you work 2 rows of stocking stitch, beginning with a knit row. Then you begin the stocking stitch ridge, and you need to increase 1 stitch in the first row. I've just finished row 1 of the 4 rows of stocking stitch that we need to do before we start the flower pattern. Now the slipped stitch ribbing. Before we begin it, we do 1 knit stitch. It's an extra stitch not included in the pattern, and it's going to be a stocking stitch all the way up the sample, all the way up. Now the pattern: purl 3, knit 1, wrapping the yarn twice around the needle, purl 3, knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, wrapping the yarn twice around the needle, purl 3, and continue on to the end of the row. Row 2 of the slipped stitch ribbing. Knit 3, purl 1, knit 3. Now yarn forward, slip the next stitch off, releasing the second wrap that we did, knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, yarn forward. Now we're going to slip the next stitch, releasing the second wrap. And at the end of row 2, we've just knitted 3, and the last stitch is the transition stitch, which is a stocking stitch all the way. And that leads on to a purl row, which will be the second row for the 4 rows of stocking stitch before commencing the flower pattern. Now that was the 3rd row of the stocking stitch. Now we are up to the 3rd row of the slipped stitch ribbing. Knit 1 to get started. Here's the pattern proper. Purl 3. Yarn to the back of the work, slip the stitch purlwise, purl 3. Knit 1, purl 3, yarn to the back of the work, slip the stitch purlwise, yarn forward to purl 3. Continue on to the end of the row. Row 4 of the slipped stitch ribbing. Knit 3, purl 1, knit 3. Now we're up to that slipped stitch. Yarn to the front, slip the stitch purlwise, yarn back for knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, yarn forward, slip the stitch purlwise, yarn back and continue to the end of that section where the last stitch will be a purl stitch because it's our transition between the two colours. Now let's wrap this around, and this is our last row, our 4th row of the stocking stitch. So that was row 4 of the slipped stitch ribbing and row 4 of the stocking stitch. Row 1 of the flower pattern is knit. Now we are back to row 1 of the rib pattern. Knit 1, purl 3, knit 1, wrapping the yarn around twice, purl 3, knit 1. I won't show you any more of this rib pattern because we've been right through it. Row 2 of the flower pattern. I've put an extra stitch here and it's going to be a stocking stitch all the way up, the same as the one beside it. Now the pattern starts now, and the pattern also starts with a purl stitch. Now we're going to knit with triple yarn over. That's 1, 2, 3, and we do that 5 times. That's 3, 4, 5, then we purl 1. Now we do the triple yarn over 5 times, followed by a purl 1. If you'd like to see this done slowly and carefully, go to our website and look up the individual stitch patterns. This flower pattern is number 45 in our stitch library. Now how many was that? There's the purl 1, that's a cluster of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a cluster of 5, so purl 1, and continue on doing your triple yarn clusters. When you come to the end of this second row of the flower pattern, and you've done your 5 clusters of triple yarn overs, followed by 1 purl, there it is, there's 1 more purl for the end of the row that I have added. Row 3 of the flower pattern, knit 1 to start. That's not part of the flower pattern, that's just an extra one on the edge. Now purl 1, yarn back, we're going to slip the next 5 clusters off the needle, dropping the extra loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarn forward, slip the 5 back, yarn back, slip them again to the right hand needle, yarn forward, slip them again, yarn back and slip them to the right. Now we've put 2 wraps around the cluster. Firm them up and we purl 1. Let's slip the next 5 off. Yarn back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yarn forward, slip the 5 of them to the left, yarn back, slip them to the right, yarn forward, slip them again, yarn back, and you can firm them up purl 1. Then yarn back and slip the next 5 until you get to the end of the row. There's our last wrap. So the last stitch of the pattern is a purl 1, transition is a knit 1. And the transition for the next one is also a knit 1. And you should see 2 lovely rows of stocking stitch. That was row 4 of the slipped stitch ribbing. Now row 4 of the flowers. First of all we do the 1 stocking stitch for the transition stitch. Now purl 1, then we knit 5 right on top of those flowers, right on those nice long loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ending the last one of course with a purl. Rows 5 and 7 are knit rows. Rows 6 and 8 are purl rows. In other words, we're going to do 4 rows of stocking stitch. Some nice smooth knitting in between the rows of flowers. That's 3 complete patterns of the slipped stitch ribbing and 1 complete pattern of the row of flowers. Sometimes you need to ease the wraps up a little bit to sit them in the middle of the flower, or however you would like them to be. I have finished the first section of this block Q, the flowers and the ribbing. I worked the pattern 3 times and changed colour on the first row on row 1 of the 4th pattern. Row 1 is a knit row. One thing about putting these 2 patterns together is you need to be careful. When you're creating the flowers, it's a triple yarn over, and then you come over here for these long ribs and it's only a double yarn over. The next part of the pattern is some reverse stocking stitch. We're going to start with a knit 1 row and then work 5 rows of reverse stocking stitch before then changing to the stocking stitch ridge. New colour, new stitches. 1 row of knit followed by 5 rows of reverse stocking stitch. Then just in there 2 rows of stocking stitch, and now I have done the first row of the stocking stitch ridge, and the first row is a knit row. I increased 1 stitch in that first row. Row 2 of stocking stitch ridge is purl 1, then knit 2 together, knit 2 together all the way. Really one of the simplest stitches you could ever do. Knit 2 together until you get to the last stitch, which is purl 1. Row 3 of the stocking stitch ridge. Knit 1, then knit into the front and the back of each stitch, knit into the front, knit into the back of every stitch. So in the last row we knitted 2 together, now we're putting them all back. What could be simpler? All the way to the last stitch, which will just be a knit stitch. Row 4 is just purl, a simple 4-row pattern. And here is the completed block Q. Some nice bold flowers and then very fine ridges set off by these strong vertical lines in the ribs.
As you now know, the row of flowers is quite an easy stitch, yet it has that star quality that makes it shout, "Look at me, look at me." Farewell from Daphne.
Hi, I'm Ferg, Daphne's husband. Here are the steps to get your free download of Daphne's Textured Sampler ebook. The first step is send an email to knitwithdaphne@gmail.com and include the subject free download. There is no need for any content in the email, and then send the email. You will receive an automatic response to your email that includes the link to access Google Cloud. When you click the link, the Knit with Daphne folder with all the downloadable patterns will open. Double-click the textured sampler blanket to open and download the ebook. Enjoy knitting the textured sampler blanket.